Yukio Hatoyama is in Hong Kong. The former Japanese Prime Minister recently attended an event at the University of Hong Kong and also gave interviews to media outlets, including Wen Wei Po. The topics he discussed were all heavyweight issues: the Taiwan question, Japan's security policy, Sino-Japanese relations, the Tokyo trials from 1946 to 48, and more. Now, his positions on these matters were crystal clear and in many cases quite blunt. For instance, will mainland invade Taiwan? Are Japan's recent security policy changes aimed at China? Is there a possibility of a breakthrough in Sino-Japanese relations? In this episode, let's take a look at what Hatoyama actually said. Above all, the Taiwan question. Now let's begin with the most sensitive issue, Taiwan. In Yukio Hatoyama's visit, he clearly reiterated that Japan should abide by the One China principle and say no to Taiwan independence. He also criticized Japanese politicians for exploiting the Taiwan issue for political purposes. In particular, he said the remarks made by the current Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi were wrong and should be withdrawn with an apology. He also specifically stated that the likelihood of conflict arising from the Taiwan issue is almost zero. Now this was his original statement during his speech.
There has been a long-standing understanding between Japan and China dating back to 1970s.
Now, what he meant was that Japan and mainland China reached a mutual understanding on the Taiwan issue as early as the 1970s, laying the foundation for stability and prosperity in East Asia. Although right-wing forces in Japan have attempted to blur this historical consensus, East Asia has never experienced large-scale, high-intensity conflicts like those in the Middle East or Eastern Europe. In his personal view, the possibility of conflict over Taiwan is extremely low, close to zero.
In practical terms, the likelihood of an armed conflict over Taiwan is extremely low. Personally, I believe it is close to zero.
During subsequent media interview, reporters raised the same question again, asking why he believes that the likelihood of conflict over Taiwan is nearly zero. They also asked whether he thinks mainland would use force against Taiwan. Hatoyama responded as follows. He said that Chinese President Xi had worked in Fujian province for many years and had frequent contact with people from Taiwan, so he understands the sentiments and concerns very well. Moreover, since both sides of the strait belong to the same nation, he believes President Xi would not pursue reunification through a divisive use of force. And that is why, as he stated in his speech, the possibility of conflict over Taiwan is close to zero. He also emphasized that Japan and China should exercise restraint in military and security matters to avoid misjudgments. Now, Hatoyama's second topic was on Japan's security policy. During the media interview, reporters also asked about Japan's recent changes in security policy, including the establishment of a national intelligence agency, the relaxation of restrictions on defense equipment exports, and expert meetings regarding the 3 security documents. A reporter directly asked whether these moves were aimed at China, and Hatoyama's answer was also very straightforward: yes, but the direction is wrong. Hatoyama said that these policy changes are aimed at strengthening military capabilities and intelligence surveillance, and indeed they are directed at China. However, he believes this direction is mistaken. If one side increases military strength, the other side will follow suit, creating what he described as a deterrence paradox, pushing both sides into a dangerous cycle of arms expansion. And the third comes to Sino-Japanese relations. Now, speaking of Sino-Japanese relations, Hatoyama described the current situation as standing at a crossroads. One path is to follow the United States in continuing to confront China. The other one is to pursue cooperation and return relations to normalization. In the media interview, he stated directly that conditions are not yet mature for a direct meeting between the leaders of China and Japan. However, he cited the experience during Shinzo Abe's administration as an example, arguing that at times like this, it's even more important to promote people-to-people exchanges.
高市首相と習近平主席はなかなか簡単には首脳会談ができるような
Hatoyama explained that the environment and atmosphere for a direct meeting between President Xi and Prime Minister Takaichi are currently not in place. However, during a former Prime Minister Abe's tenure, similar circumstances occurred. At that time, the key disputes were not about Taiwan, but about territorial issues in the East China Sea and visits to the Yasukuni Shrine. And as a result, there was a period when no summit meetings were held until they resumed at the end of 2014. And during that period, the two governments maintained active behind-the-scenes consultations and discussions. So by citing this example, Hatoyama wanted to emphasize that when communication at governmental level becomes difficult, people-to-people exchanges become especially important. And hence we come to number 4, the world order. Now on the issue of world order, Hatoyama's criticism was even more direct. He argued that the current narrative of a binary confrontation between a democratic camp and an authoritarian camp is incorrect. And in his view, the greatest shock to the international order comes from the US unilateralism, particularly the America First approach. In his speech, he directly stated, "Of course, the greatest threat to the world order is America under Trump." Well, the audience burst into laughter. It was as if he had voiced what many were thinking.
When we talk about the crisis of world order today, the most serious threat is President Donald Trump's America.
He further pointed out that even if Trump were to leave office, the impact would not immediately disappear. In other words, he sees this as a deeper structural issue. When major powers no longer respect multilateral rules, the international order will continue to fragment, and therefore he advocates that China and Japan should work together with Europe and other countries to uphold multilateralism, free trade and international rules, forming what he described as an alliance of middle powers to stabilize the global situation. Now, Hatoyama's 5th topic was on the Tokyo trials. Now, regarding the Tokyo trials, during the media interview, a reporter raised the issue, and Hatoyama responded very firmly. He believes that the Japanese government has already acknowledged the legitimacy of the Tokyo trials, and any attempt to overturn that recognition would be wrong. He also explicitly opposes Japanese political leaders visiting the Yasukuni Shrine.
裁判に関しては、日本政府はそれをきちんと認めているわけですから。
Hatoyama said that Japan should also remember the generosity shown by the Chinese government in renouncing war reparations at the time. He stated clearly, Japanese political leaders absolutely should not visit Yasukuni Shrine where Class A war criminals were enshrined. This touches on a fundamental issue in Japan's post-war historical understanding, how Japan confronts its history of aggression and handles responsibility toward neighboring countries. Hatoyama stands as clearly in favor of facing history squarely and avoiding renewed regional tensions. To sum up Yukio Hatoyama's Hong Kong visit, what he discussed was not merely the current frictions between China and Japan, but his broader vision for the entire East Asian order. Less confrontation, more dialogue. Less military expansion, more cooperation. Less bloc-based thinking, more pragmatic engagement. Placed within today's East Asian geopolitical context, these views are certainly worth careful reflection.